It's draft week for the Raiders. Go Raiders. Tune in for a special podcast as I'm going back to my roots. Sports talk. Go Raiders. All right, so if you are a longtime Raider fan, then you know that as fans, we've been through a lot in the past, decade and a half, maybe even more. I mean, since 2002, when we lost the Super Bowl to our former and current coach, John Gruden, we've had it rough. Now, if you take that moment after 2002, that Bill Callahan didn't change the offense. So in a Super Bowl, Tampa Bay, the Bucs, who we were playing, who had our old coach as their coach, John Gruden, they knew everything we would do. They knew everything that was coming. So, of course, we lost horribly. And since that point, the late Al Davis, may he rest in peace, wanted to win, immediately. I mean, he knew his time was limited, and he wanted to do anything he could to make immediate impact and win. And so the horrible decisions came over and over. I mean, when you think about Jamarcus Russell, now, I know other people had him as number one overall. I did not at the time. I remember at the time I wanted, I believe it was Calvin Johnson, who was coming out as well, a receiver. And a side note, Mark Davis tells a story of how his father called him an idiot because his dad said, hey, Mark, who should we draft? And Mark said, we need a receiver. Get a receiver. And Mark Davis was right because Jamarcus was horrible. And then I remember being excited about, certain coaches. I remember Art Shell's return. Art Shell come back for a second stint, and I was skeptical, kind of excited, but, because he had some success before. He had a 4-0 preseason. I was like, we've arrived, right? That's when I used to put a little bit more stock in preseason than I do now. I'm older and wiser now. And then that season, they won 2 games. So preseason means nothing. I don't get excited about preseason, win or lose. I just go and look and see who's performing, and that can kind of tell me a little bit more than if the team will do good or not. But after that 2002 season when we lost and Callahan was the coach, listen to the list of coaches they've had. Norv Turner, Art Shell, remember good old Lane Kiffin, Tom Cable, Hugh Jackson, and under Hugh, that's when Al had passed away and the greatest trade in history went down for Carson Palmer. Remember that? Horrible. And then Reggie McKenzie took over. He was appointed by Mark Davis. We had the Dennis Allen era, Tony Sperano, and JDR, Jack Del Rio. So now we have John Gruden. And so under JDR, there was some excitement. There was a 12-4 season. Everything seemed to be clicking. Everything seemed to be going right. And Jack, we trust. And then all of a sudden, what happens? JDR ruined it. First, it was kind of weird. He kept Ken Norton Jr. for quite a while, I thought. The defense never looked good under supposedly defensive coaches, Ken Norton and JDR. But to each its own. Musgrave seemed to get the most out of Carr, and the offense was clicking under him. And for some reason, I heard kind of the backstory. The offensive line coach at the time, Mike Tice, and Musgrave didn't get along. I did remember Musgrave all of a sudden being upstairs instead of down in the field, and that was kind of weird. But in the end, they did not let Musgrave stay. His contract did expire, and Jack Del Rio moved on to an up-and-coming genius, Todd Downing, nice guy, loved the guy as a person, didn't have success. It seemed like every route was an out route, cut back. It was just very unimaginative. It was horrible. And we ended up having a horrible season. So what does that leave for 2019? What does 2019 hold? That's what I'm going to talk about in this podcast. Welcome to the Rodney O Podcast. Okay, today's podcast is all Raiders. I'm a Raiders fan, and I have in the past did some lives with my fantasy league. And so I thought, I would go back to my roots. I do have a podcast. If you guys listen to me now, my podcast, you can browse my topics. They do deal with life, but every once in a while I may chime in, especially during the season, as the season comes. Maybe I might add another one every week talking about sports. Leave a comment if you would like that. But anyway, talking about the Raiders. 2019 draft is coming up this week, and all the speculation and rumors and mocks are all flying around, right? A lot of talk and a lot of chatter about there. But I want to talk to you about the Raiders team and address my thoughts on the team and their draft coming up. Specifically the first round. I am not a guy who's going to mock all 7 rounds. After the first, you're probably going to be so screwed up that you may get lucky and something will land and stick. But most of the time, come on, we know. I'm just not a mock guy. I'm an overall philosophy, overall team guy who likes to look at the team as a whole and likes to analyze what I think the team will do. I think I'm pretty much in tune with the team. So let's kind of look at this and kind of examine where we are at. How do we get here? How do we get to where the team had a 4-win season again last year after a couple years ago having great promise at 12-4? Well, I remember for years, people wanted Jon Gruden back. I remember that. And I was not one of those people. I will admit, every time I heard it, I'm like, let's move on. He was great back then. He's on TV now. Let's just move on. But it's just the noise would not die, and I didn't know Mark Davis was that infatuated with with Jon Gruden that he signed him to a 10-year deal. I'm not sure how much of those years are guaranteed. I don't think all 10 are guaranteed, but anyway, 10-year deal. So I recall when he was hired in that press conference and everything else, he started to talk, and I admit I started to buy into the hype of Jon Gruden, of Chucky, right? I just really started to buy into the hype. And then I saw preseason. Okay, he's saving David Carr. I understand that. We're kind of seeing what team we have. And then I saw the first game of the season against the Rams. And I remember thinking, Jon Gruden can still coach. He can still call an offense. But the bad news was the defense was just as bad as ever. The defense didn't improve any. And I thought, thinking back to that game, first half, I was kind of excited. They were hanging with the Rams. Remember what the Rams were at the time? They were hanging with them, scoring, driving out the ball down the field. But then second half, it just kind of got away from them. We couldn't stop them, and then that kind of changed the game plan. We couldn't play as conservative as Jon Gruden was trying to play with grounding the ball, and so we became predictable, and we lost that game. And the drama that was happening, too, was this whole thing surrounding Khalil Mack, right? Mack wanted big money. And to be honest, he probably didn't want to stay on the team long term. He would have took the money if it was a major deal like he got with the Bears. Probably was looking for more than what he got from the Bears. He probably would have just stayed just to get paid. But so be it. That's the nature of the business. I'm not mad at that. And having Mack didn't necessarily translate into wins necessarily. He certainly could have helped that defense last year. Don't get me wrong. It certainly could have helped the pass rush as people double teamed him. Other people could have got to the quarterback. So don't get me wrong. He was very much needed out there. But I just don't know how many more wins we would have got with Mack. 3, 2, 3. But that being the point, I was not a guy who was a fan of trading him. I would have franchise tagged him. I admit, I don't think there's anything that can change my mind about that decision to trade him. Now, I do understand, and I do get that the team got some very good draft picks. Only thing I'm upset about is giving away a 2. That wasn't necessary in my opinion. But Reggie was at the helm at the time. Maybe he just did that to get the deal through. But I'm happy with the haul that they got. But again, I'll go back and say, especially at the time, I was not a fan of this. I understood it, but not a fan. And so it became clear early on that the team was not going to have a good year. Carr didn't look that good, but everybody loves him. But everybody feels that the team should keep Derek Carr. And so there are some reasons why to get rid of Carr, right? He's not the same after the injuries, people say. He had the broken leg, he had the back, and people say he's skittish in the pocket. He's seeing ghosts. He's just not the same. So he's damaged goods. Some people say too many screens, too many checkdowns, third and long play. I guess people want him to throw an interception rather than just try to throw 5 yards and hope a person can make a play. I understand a lot of times it's just not gonna happen, but I understand what he's doing. But anyway, and then also another reason to get rid of him is not a rookie, not a second-year QB, right? And now there's reasons why it's not his fault. You hear these reasons, right? New system. And he did get better with time. He had that long streak of no interceptions. He was kind of moving the ball down the field a lot easier than before when he was brand new under the system. Reasons why it's not his fault. He hasn't had a consistent OC. And that is true. So many different offensive coordinators coming in and out, different systems. So I can understand that part. And then wide receivers quit on him and then injured wide receivers. The receiving core wasn't that great. Think about that last year, Dr. Real, starting with Crabtree, who kind of just something happened and they wouldn't even talk. And the receiver, Crab was sitting on the sidelines out of the game. And then you look at Cooper, the Cooper trade. I'll talk about that in a second because I get why Cooper was traded. And I'm not as high on Cooper as a lot of people may be, especially since he went to Dallas. Now all of a sudden he's a great, great receiver. And I think he's still the same as he's always been. But the part of the reason why I say wide receivers quit on him, I say Crabtree, and I guess we can get into Cooper. Cooper also quit a lot on his routes. I watched one where he just stopped running and it was INT because it was down the field. And for some reason, I don't know why Cooper thought I don't know. He just kind of stopped running. Just quit on him. And then I looked more closely into a couple of things. One play I remember was he was in the end zone and all he had to do was turn around and Carr had the ball right there. And what it was is Cooper was running in the end zone. The defender was to the left. If he turned to the right, Carr placed the ball beautifully right there. It would have went into his chest and it would have been a touchdown. What does Cooper do? Turn left in the direction of the defender. And so it makes Carr look bad. And so Cooper, just quit on routes, the wrong routes, turn into the defender. And then he gets traded because he really, I don't know how much his heart was into playing football. I mean, he really just looked like he was nonchalant. I know he's quiet and this nice reserved guy, but I mean, there has to be a little bit of passion. I'm pretty much the same as him with my mannerism, but competition. I mean, come on. I'm getting pumped up a little bit more than what I saw from him. And so Cowboys and Cowboy media and other people in the media say Cooper's a number one. I disagree. I think he is what he is. I think he is a number 2, maybe even a 3, but I think he gets his yards and gets his, I mean, he's very good. Don't get me wrong. So maybe a 3, maybe I'm having sour apples, but a 2, he's not a 1. When Crabtree was getting all those receptions and being good, that's what let Cooper get open. That's what gave Cooper his opportunities. And so on Dallas, he had 2 huge games. I mean, he has the ability to have some huge games. I mean, I'm not going to deny that, right? But there were only about 2. And then, as usual, he disappeared when the Cowboys needed him most. Disappeared. So getting the first round pick, and we would have to pay him, and I don't think he's worth top receiver money. He's not worth Antonio Brown money. That's my opinion. And then going back real quick to Carr, let's talk about this year and what do I expect and what do I think is going to happen this year. First with Carr, I like him. And I admit, I tell my friends, I tell everybody, I am biased, right? Carr does things off the field that are similar to me, like preaching the word. People know he's a Christian. People call him a Bible thumper. He's not that. And that's a different topic, maybe for a different day. But he's a great human being. I like Carr. I'm biased. I think the 12-4 year wasn't a fluke. I think he's smarter now, more efficient. And I think he'll have a huge leap this year. Part of the thing that's funny is because people were saying that, Gruden's coming in. And I remember, I am not a fan of Rich Gannon. Sorry, Rich. Good quarterback. But I think a lot of times the Raider hate from him, and I know he's saying he cares. I know what he's doing, but some of the things he says just baffles me. when Gruden was being hired, he said, Carr's going to have to work harder. If he thinks he's working hard, he's going to work harder now. He's going to get a mouthful. I don't know if he's going to get along because he's this, I'm like, what is this? How do you know? Like, I know you work with Gruden, but do you think Carr's going to crumble and cry? I mean, that stereotype about, because you're a Christian, you're weaker. No, it makes you even stronger. And there's reasons why, and I'm not going to get into that, but he's a strong person. As you saw, they had this one sideline thing where Carr went off the field and Gruden and Carr was yelling at each other. They're in the game. Their hearts are in it. They love football. Like, let's not overanalyze this thing about that he's not going to work hard enough and get along. I think that goes into why I don't think they're getting a quarterback this year. I think they generally get along, and I think Gruden really likes Carr, how efficient and how smart he has become in the system, and I think they're going to have a better year this year. I think you're going to see a huge leap in Carr this year. And I admit, I am biased, so those who are listening saying you are crazy, I understand the Carr hate, or I understand, not even the hate, I understand why you want to move on. So don't get me wrong, I'm reasonable, I understand, right? But moving on to Mayock, I think he's a better evaluator than Reggie. I don't see him taking the high round projects or prospects like Reggie did, with the DJ Hayden, Mario Edwards Jr., Menelik Watson, the offensive tackle. I don't see him, Mayock doing that. I see him doing solid picks, He'll be fine. And like I said, they're not going to draft the quarterback. I mean, all this quarterback talk about Kyler Murray, I mean, they're doing their due diligence. If Murray does fall, it'll be interesting at 4, but I really think they'll get Williams at 4. I really think they're going to go defense. I think they may trade other picks to maybe even move up some. But I think that when it gets down to the end of the first round, they may try to shop that. I don't see them shopping 4. I think they understand they want a great edge rusher and they want somebody good on defense. And I think they're going to go heavy on defense in the draft. But, I can see them getting a tight end. I can see them getting a running back. I can see them getting offensive guard. So I kind of contradicted myself, right? Go heavy on defense. But I can see if there's somebody they like in those positions, running back, tight end, or offensive lineman, they'll jump on it. But they may even, I can see them maneuvering around, especially those late in the first round. If they can get like 2 or 3 picks, I can see them doing it. And they got next year a 1 as well. So a couple 1s as well. So they may, deal those in order to get more this year. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of that. I just see some solid picks from Mike Mayock. And then Jon Gruden. I think it's really good that he has a GM that was his pick. A GM he respects, is Gruden going to be the guy who is going to make all the decisions? Maybe, I don't know. But I think Mayock certainly has his ear. I think that it's a better match than Gruden and Reggie. I don't think Gruden and Reggie talked. I think it was more like Gruden said, let's trade Mac, and then it was up to Reggie to do what he said. Let's get Bryant. And then it was up to Reggie to do whatever he did to get it. So I just see that. And then the backup QB. So I see more of communication. And I also think Gruden can still coach. I think he is a good offensive mind still. I think he wants to prove a lot of people wrong about his comeback. I think he is all in it. I think he works hard. I think he's very knowledgeable. And I think we're going to see a jump in the team, especially on offense this year than before. Now, the thing I am worried about is defense. I don't see a huge improvement in defense. I think the corner play, especially with Conley, is solid. I think we may get some edge rushers and maybe get a better pass rush. Maybe it can't get worse, can it, than last year? A better pass rush. But, I still think teams will eventually score on us. I see a lot of, I can see a lot of, 35, 28 point games, 42, 31, that type of thing going on. Hope I'm wrong, but that's what I see. So I kind of talked about who they draft at 4. I think Quentin Williams is who they draft at 4. I think Kyler goes number 1. I think if Kyler drops, somebody will go ahead of us at 3 and draft him anyway. I think there's a good smokescreen from the Raiders in order for that to happen because if somebody jumps in front of them and if the draft goes a certain way, even if somebody doesn't get 3, maybe the Jets stay put. And don't get Quentin Williams. I can see definitely the Raiders getting more stock, getting more picks out of number 4 by moving down. I just don't see why you get Antonio Brown, who loves Carr, gets along with him, gets these receivers coming in just to trade him or just to bring somebody else in this year. I think Carr is the guy this year. I think it was obvious a long time ago. Like I said, am I biased? But I think I'm sounding reasonable in saying they are not going to do anything with Carr this year. I do agree. Carr has a bad year with the weapons he has, which I know he won't. But if he does, I can see Gruden making plans to do something else. So, what are predictions of this year? What are my predictions? I think they're having a great offensive year. I think the defense, like I said, will struggle at times. But I think, worst case scenario for the team, 7-9. Best case scenario, 10-6. What I kind of think is going to happen, 8-8. So I'm really tapering my expectations for the team this year. I am really looking forward to this year. Last year in Oakland, it wouldn't be funny. It's like annual, right? This is the last year. This is the last year. This is the last year. Are they going to play in Oakland next year? I kind of hope not. I'm ready for them to go to a new stadium, even though I live close to Oakland and going to Vegas is more of a plane trip or a 12-hour drive. I think it's time for a new stadium. I've been to the Oakland Stadium many times. Not good. And I don't want to wait until somebody falls off one of the edges because it cracks before they do something. So glad for them. Glad for Mark. Anyway, that is Raider Talk. And for those who don't know me, you can go ahead and check out my YouTube channel, Rodney O. And I have a weekly vlog, Rodney O Weekly, and it shows kind of what I do and what I normally, how I normally operate. Please subscribe to that channel. The link is going to be in the podcast description, or you can simply go to YouTube and search Rodney O Weekly. And I say this every week because it is my purpose. I do love sports, so I do talk sports, but for most of what I do, I want to inspire, encourage, and motivate all of you as you navigate this journey that we call life. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys. Go Raiders.